So as an introduction, we're the Growth Gang. There's a team of 4 of us. I'm a product designer in the team, so my responsibility is to design and to develop the parts of the products that customers see and interact with when they're first experiencing Tanda.
Thanks. I'm Brod. I'm the product manager of Growth Gang, and I basically make sure that we're always working on something that adds value to the customer and adds value to Tanda at the same time.
Hey, I'm Alan. I'm the business analyst over here at the growth team, and what I really do is I basically just stare at the metrics, making sure that we're on track about sort of the work that we're doing and measuring our experiments, making sure that we're sort of being successful and we're hitting the goals that we want to hit.
I'm Jun. I've only recently joined the growth team. I work as a developer, so I help implement solutions that we come up with.
Cool. So our goal as a team is to optimize a conduit that allows prospective customers to become paying customers. And what we mean by that is, work with the parts of the product that help people come on board and start using Tanda. So things like sign-up flows. We look at advertising spends. We look at just onboarding, just all the things that help people see the value in Tanda and then use that, make the decision to actually come on board and use it. To do that, our mantra is to launch, lawn, and repeat. So we are a team that's moving very quickly, to be up there and to iterate really quickly and be the best we can. We need to move really fast. So this is one of the reasons that we've brought in the sprint process. Now, you've probably heard throughout some of the other talks here, Tanda is not a place where process is brought in for the sake of it. We started doing this as a team because we knew that speed was of the essence. We really need to get stuff out there and see if it works and fail quickly and fail fast and then learn from that. So the idea is to solve problems and build a realistic prototype in 5 days so you can test it and get results. So that at the end of it, you know whether it's going to work, whether it's possibly going to work and you need to change it, or whether it's just not a good solution at all, and then think about it again and have another crack. So a sprint process is split into 5 days. Now, the first one, you're looking at problem identification, so figuring out what problem you're solving. You're moving on to then coming up with your solutions, so sketching is a part of that. Deciding upon the solutions that you've come up with, formulated, prototyping it, so you can have something that your customers can look at and actually give you feedback from when they actually test it on the Friday. So this is like a general sprint week. Like if you're starting off a sprint, this is what you'll do first. This is what we do first when we're running one. After that, you then, if you're following up on it, you would not go back to say doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because you've already got a prototype. So you just change it, make some amendments, and then test it again and see what happens. Logistics around like a sprint, and I'll just mention quickly that it is different to an agile sprint. So this is a design sprint which, in terms of its activities, do differ, but it's still time-based. It's just quicker. It's you're doing something in a week instead. They recommend that it's for people in 5 to 7, like a team of 5 to 7 people. There's a decider. Now, a decider is the person who, of course, makes the final call on a lot of the things. So if you're moving forward, you need to not get caught up in decision paralysis or just analysis paralysis and think, okay, is this the best way and this is the best way, and get in debate about it. You need someone who's going to be like, all right, we're going to go with this one, or we're going to go this way. And they're generally someone who's closest to the problem. So an example of a decider that, a person who was a decider in one of our sprints was Renee, our head of product. She was closest to like the onboarding type of things, the Tanda's first impressions. So when we were focusing on that, she'd come and be like, okay, I think that's the best way the best path you should take. A facilitator has the job of helping it run on time and just keep it running smoothly, because within 5 days there's quite a fair few things to do, as you'll see. So their job is really just to make sure everyone's on board and moving on to the next activity. Now I'll hand off to Rod.
Thanks for that, Kelvin. Sorry, is my mic turned on? Don't know. Oh, that's fine. So basically, the way we're just going to run this... Thank you. So basically, the way we're going to run this presentation is that some of you might be like, oh, you guys can only apply this to stuff you do in tech. Yes, that is true, but you can also apply it to a bunch of other problems. So throughout this, we're just going to go through 3 examples. One is going to be one that we actually worked on ourselves, and another one is going to be based around the hospitality industry, and another one is going to be based around social media and marketing in general. So we actually worked on a referral program, and if you can't read it, the text is a little bit small, but basically the program that we built was that you receive $150 for referring someone who becomes a Tanda customer, and that person gets 50% off for 2 months. So if we apply this to the hospitality industry, perhaps you want to offer a new selection of items to customers. You can also apply the sprint process to this. Another example is social media marketing. Say you just want to increase the presence on social media platforms. Again, you can apply the sprint process to this. So we'll basically go through each of the days of the sprint process, starting off with, believe it or not, Monday. And you can basically just we'll start with scoping. So instead of thinking of a solution first, you start thinking about all the goal that you want to achieve at the end. So the first thing you do, like you sit down and you ask, like, where do we want to be within 6 months, a year, or even 5 years from now? And this long-term goal, when we applied it to our own referral program, was that we want to create a self-sufficient channel where referred customers sign up themselves, and that perpetual cycle just continues from that. So the long-term goal for, say, the new menu is creating a menu that emphasizes the quality of food and is reflective of our brand. And for social media marketing, your long-term goal could quite easily be having a social media presence where new customers can discover our brand easily. So that's the first thing you do on a Monday morning, is just identify the long-term goal before you even start thinking about what possible solutions there could actually be out there. So once you've got a long-term goal in hand, you basically just list out a bunch of sprint questions. Now, these questions might seem overly obvious, but it's basically just answering how could we actually fail if we were to roll something out like this. Now, if we apply this to the referral program, a couple of problems or sprint questions that we came up with were the incentive isn't enough for the user, the referred customer doesn't see the value, referrals are sent to the wrong type of customer, like maybe we might be targeting people who actually don't like Tanda and they're not going to actually refer us at all. So these might seem overly obvious, and in the sense of a new menu, say customers actually don't like the items, like that's quite an obvious one, but items don't reflect our brand and we can't source ingredients. The main objective of actually writing it down is just to get it in front of you and make sure everyone can see it in your team. It'd be like, yeah, this is, despite this being quite obvious, are we all aware that this could actually potentially fail the long-term goal? So for social media marketing, the sprint question could easily be like the content isn't contextual to the platform. Maybe you're using the wrong kind of platform. It's not in the correct format that people actually want to view the marketing material in, and we're not posting to the right time or to the right people or anything like that. So again, quite obvious stuff, but after getting a long-term goal out, it's pretty good to just identify where this could stuff up. So after we've got the long-term goal, we know where it could potentially fail, we then go on to make a map. And the map is a pretty critical element for the rest of the sprint process. So you basically just list customers and key players on the left, you draw the ending, and with your completed goal on the right, and then the aim is to just connect the two together. So in the case of the referral program, on the far, let me get a pointer out there. On the far left here, we've got the key players, so the referred customer, the existing customer, and Tanda down here. And then the goal here is that the referred customer actually sees value, sets up an account, does a bunch of stuff. The existing customer also gets a kickback from it. And then this cycle just continues again. That's pretty much what we want. So all we did was draw these high-fidelity little people here and draw the goals here, and then we just basically went from, just started building this map here. And yeah, just listing out everything that would have to happen to reach the goal from point A to point B. And in the case of, like, say, a menu or the social media marketing example, you could easily just list like your staff and then like your customers and then just draw the map. So after you have a map, which basically builds in the goal, builds in a bunch of problems, and basically identifies how you can get to X. You do a little process called asking the experts, and asking the experts is quite important. So you basically ask people that sit close to the problem or sit close to the issue that you're trying to solve, and basically you ask them about the vision, about customer research, how things actually work, and previous efforts. Just making sure that you're actually not cannibalizing someone else's work in the company whilst you're doing this sprint process. And in fact, you do show them the map. So for the referral program, as you can imagine, a lot of people are impacted by a referral program. So when we came up with this idea, we had to sit down with sales, WS, finance, product, and customers to make sure we could actually feasibly do this, to basically also see what other referral programs had been created before, why they failed, why they were successful, and how we can be like compliant, how we can actually build this with the rest of our product and everything else. So if you apply this to the new menu, the people or the experts in this situation would quite easily be the customers, as well as the kitchen and the admin. Again, I don't work in hospitality, so that's the extent of the experts, but I'm sure there's a lot more. But basically, yeah, just sitting down with them, going through the map and showing them, oh, this is who we think is involved in this process. This is what we think the path we should take, and we think this is where we should end up at the end. And the experts can most definitely interrupt this process and be like, oh, this point on the map is not right. Like, this is going to break X, Y, and Z. This is not going to work for our customers. And it's important to take note of that. And this is all done in a Monday. So you've only spent like 3.5 hours at this point. You've probably got a wealth of knowledge so far in this short period of time that you probably wouldn't have the week before. In the social media example, the experts, again, quite obvious, the customers, staff, agencies, and any tutorials you might have consulted beforehand to actually reach that point. So coming to the end of a Monday, you've listed a long-term goal. You've identified something. You've got the long-term goal. You've listed how it can actually fail. You've identified that. You've written that down on paper. Everyone can see it. You've made a map. You've asked the experts what could go wrong, why this could work. You change the map. At the end of the day, you pick a target. And if the problem is large, and like there's a lot of stuff going on the map or whatever, just pick a target, a small one, a particular like element of that map, and focus on that for the sprint, for the remainder of the week. The team can weigh in, but the decider, which Calvin explained before, does make the final call on what should actually proceed. So in the case of the referral program, you can see here we just circled this here as our target to focus on. And it's basically just making sure the existing customer finds a referral program, engages with the referred customer, and that Tanda actually utilizes the referral program again, so how we can actually build into this. And after creating this, it should basically produce a snowball effect to create the remainder of this map and hopefully reach our end goal. All this stuff can come later, but we decided to focus on this after our deciders weighed in on this sprint, and we decided to pick this target here as the focus for the week. So for the new menu, your target could easily just be launch a new lunch menu. So instead of looking at all the possible meals you can have throughout the day, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, perhaps just focusing on a single element, like lunch, and creating a new menu just for lunch and seeing how that rolls, instead of spending so much resources trying to get new menus for all your different meals. For social media marketing, it could just easily be increasing business awareness on Instagram. So here we've just picked only one social media platform, and we've picked only one element that we want to increase, and that's increasing business awareness on a single platform. So not going for that scattergun approach, and actually honing in on one part and focusing on that for the remainder of the week. So that wraps up Monday. And I'll pass over to Kelvin again to go through Tuesday about creating solutions.
Thanks, Brod. So yeah, just to reiterate, at the end of Monday, you should have a fair idea what you're going to focus on, which direction you're heading. So then when it comes on Tuesday, you're actioning that and you're coming up with some solutions. And the way you're doing that is through sketching. Now, you don't have to be an artist. You're not creating a picture-perfect drawing. It's really just getting the ideas that have been rolling around, perhaps in the process that you've gone through on Monday that are up here, onto paper and onto something that you can share with other people so you can get feedback on it. So the sprint sketch process is 4 steps. First of all, you're coming back and you're looking at, well, we use whiteboards, and that's what the book recommends as well. We use whiteboards to write down all of our ideas, our long-term goal, our sprint questions, our map, so it's all in one place. It's like our single source of truth. So you come back on Tuesday, you refer to that, and you're writing down succinctly in your own words what the problem is. Next step, take that, formulate some ideas. You're going to have some solutions probably rolling around in your head already about what you need to be done. And then it's a 2-step sketching process. So the first one being a crazy eights, and then your solution sketch itself. Now, the crazy eights is one of my favorite ones. It is an exercise not in just like getting your drawings out, but like it's an idea generation one. So it can be really quickly. The idea is that it should be really quickly. These are some of our examples. As you can see, they're not pretty. They're mainly just lines, boxes, a bit of text. So you're just working that idea generation muscle so you can then come to a point when you're having a solution sketch about what it actually is. So this is a recommended example. There's not too much. There's a bit of text explaining what's actually happening here. And they recommend to do it in 3 steps, and that's the way we focus on it as well, just so you can be like, all right, is it an interface screen? This might happen here, this might be the next step, and this might be the conclusion one. Or you could just be talking about, okay, maybe this is the first part of the process, this is the second, this is the final bit. So really, you're not creating works of art, it's just getting that solution out of the mind and onto paper. Some examples. For, say, the examples that we're hypothesizing here, if you're doing a new menu, you might want to also consider about how it's presented. So that could be something that you're sketching, you're bringing out, you're saying, like, okay, let's think about some cool ways that we can actually have it come out to customers on the plate. Menu layout, you might want to give these new ones prominence, so think about if it's worth redesigning that as well. For social media marketing, if you are focusing on Instagram, of course a very visual platform, you might be looking about, okay, what's the post going to look like? Let's just sketch up what's actually going to be in it. If you're going to do a video, let's storyboard it. What are people going to see in this 30 seconds, 15, 60 seconds? You can also do some pretty cool stuff with profile layouts, so that could be something that you're sketching as well. Following that, you move into Wednesday, and I'll pass on to Alan.
Cool, thanks for that, Kelvin. So just like Brod and Kelvin have explained Monday and Tuesday here, just met. You've gone through Monday, you've scoped up your problem, you've got a pretty good idea of what your questions are, what your how might we's, you've sort of reframed what those problems are into opportunities and into, as I mentioned, a how might we sort of list. And on Tuesday, you've come up with a bunch of solutions. Wednesday is all about deciding which of these solutions, or specifically what elements of those sort of, I guess, sketches, are the best parts. And you take those, you move on to the rest of the sort of the week. So coming up with these sort of decisions, it's a bit of a 3-step process. Step 1 being the heat map. And essentially what the heat map is, you take all of the sketches that you created on Tuesday, you stick them up on the wall, sort of like this artwork, kind of like an art museum, stick it up there, and as a group, everyone's sort of looking at it. And as you're sort of looking at it silently, you're sort of deciding, keeping in mind the sprint questions that I mentioned, keeping in mind what your long-term goal is, and you decide which of these elements are the best parts. And as you do that, you sort of stick up some stickers on, I guess, those elements, and you'll start to notice there's a bunch of trends. You start to see sort of what, I guess, the winning ideas are. That leads us to the speed critique, where as a group, once you're sort of done with all the stickers, you actually discuss what sort of the elements are that you actually like, why you like those, why you think that they fit what the sprint questions were, why you think that the high might we's have been addressed, and why you think that they sort of meet with the long-term goals. Typically, you do that sort of as a group, sort of one sketch at a time, and the person that actually made that particular sketch you're talking about stays silent, and then once the group is sort of done deliberating, that sketcher will actually sort of speak up about anything that might have been missed. And again, you sort of reiterate, I guess, what those stickers might sort of be. Once the speed critique is complete, leads us to the super vote. Now, this is definitely where the decider is really important, and definitely do not be afraid to actually bring in the decider. At the end of the day, when you are sort of making decisions, especially when it's sort of like a team environment, you can really get stuck in long-winded discussions or really bogged down or sort of peeling back, I guess, the politics or sort of whatever sort of is going on in the team. And the decider is there to make sure that you just cut right through that. So you're not sort of wasting time. So the entire point of this is that the decider will come in and basically he or she will stick 3 large dot stickers on whatever it is that they think is really good. Everybody else also has just sort of the one super vote as well, which is typically just a large sticker. And at the end of these 3 steps, this is what you end up with. So you've got a whole bunch of stickers, and like I mentioned, you start to see some trends. You see at the top up there's a whole bunch of stickers, but it didn't actually get a super vote. So that could be the kind of thing that is an element that, while it's sort of quite a good idea, doesn't necessarily meet the long-term goal, or perhaps it doesn't address what the high might is. So it's something you sort of decide, well, maybe we can do that at a later time, and we can focus on what the super vote winning ideas were instead. So now that you've sort of got, I guess, what these winning elements are, you actually move on and you make what's called a storyboard. Basically, the point of the storyboard is you're making a plan. And what the plan typically looks like, sort of like a 15 grid, I guess, and you stick up what your sketches are onto that grid. Maybe essentially you're just fleshing out that map that you had made on Monday, and you take that plan into Thursday, which is prototype day, which I'll let Jun elaborate a bit about.
Thanks, Alan. So by Thursday, you've already explored the problem space. You understand all the things that could possibly go wrong, and you've started to explore the solution space. So you've figured out a solution that will take your customers from the beginning of the map to the actual solution, and you've collectively decided on a solution that will actually take them there. So if the term's unfamiliar, a prototype is basically just a proof of concept. So it's a proof of concept which you can put in front of people that they can touch, feel, interact with, so that you can basically validate the idea that you've come up with. So you've already created some sketches, you've created some storyboards. Actually bringing it to life is the whole point of the prototyping phase. And a prototype can be as sophisticated as required, or it can be quite simple. So in our case, because we are a software company, this is the prototype we came up with for the referral program. And this is basically just a website which allows you to enter a name and an email and sign up as a referrer. And because we had development capacity, we were able to quite quickly prototype this. Now, if, for instance, you're in the food industry, you might also have quite a high fidelity prototype. So if it's a case of trying to reinvent your menu, create like a new type of dish, you might actually be creating an entire dish. The idea here is that essentially you want something that you can put in front of people so they can test it, so they can validate your ideas, or come back and say, hey, look, this needs to be improved. And again, if you're in the social media marketing space, you'll want to create something which people can interact with or look at. So that might be making photographs. It might be creating digital prototypes that people can touch and play around with.
Cool, just for that, Jun. So that leads us to the very last day. So the last day of the sprint process is testing day. So you've built up this prototype, and now you get to throw it in front of 5 people. It's what you've been waiting for. You get to find out, hey, is this idea actually any good, or does it kind of suck? So basically, what the Friday looks like is me doing my best impression of the NSA. So essentially, for the referral program, what it really looked like is we basically stuck users in a separate room. Brod was in that room talking to them. And I was watching them actually use the referral program, seeing if they actually get it, see if they sort of figure out how to use it, and also sort of taking notes as Brod is asking questions about whatever it is that they happen to say. So if you've never sort of ran a user testing session before, it can be a little bit awkward if you sort of don't really know how to actually do it. My personal, I guess, big tips, first of all, make sure the user is just really comfortable. We've talked about it quite a lot throughout this conference, that sort of being candid is really quite a powerful tool. Make sure that the user is going to be candid with you. If you're throwing something in front of them that doesn't really work, they need to be comfortable enough for them to actually tell you, hey, this really just sucks. So that's sort of one hot tip. Another important thing as well, is to make sure that they're actually talking. And the best way to do that is to just ask a lot of open-ended questions. If they're sitting there looking at your prototype and they're just sitting there thinking, you're not a mind reader. You don't know what they're thinking about. So make sure that you're asking open-ended questions and basically get them to think out loud. For the new menu, some ways that you could test that, you could sort of, I guess, A/B test. Maybe run one menu on one day, run another menu on a different day, or a specific sort of portion of the day. And for the social media marketing, what you could do there is essentially make sure that you're showing the post maybe to some sort of different demographics, like customers versus non-customers, or different sort of portions of the day, because different points of the day, you'll find that there'll be different users actually using the platform. And that's it. You've done it. You've reached the end of the sprint process. You've created a prototype. You've gotten some really good qualitative feedback, and you've done all of that in a week. You can take solace in the fact, even if the prototype is just really not very good, you've only spent 1 week on it. You didn't spend months of resources, or in some cases years. 1 week, you're in such a great position. And if it turns out the prototype is actually pretty good, well, hey, you can keep going with it. You can iterate on that prototype, put it back out for testing again, get another 5 people in, see what they have to say, or even throw it out in the wild. So now that I've done that, I guess I'll pass it back to Kelvin to close out any remarks.
Thanks, Alan. So why use Sprint? I mean, just to reiterate why we use it. It was born out of the Google Ventures Lab. They help startups and smaller companies get off the ground and come from nothing to something. So that's what kind of inspired us, and we realized that we need to do that with a lot of our ideas so we can iterate quickly and get it out there and see if it actually works or not. So we're not spending all this time doing work and then it just actually goes to waste. So with that in mind, I mean, why we think it could be possible, applicable to other businesses as well, is the fact that for instance, the Monday one, you're getting multiple viewpoints. You're considering all these people. You're asking experts. You're getting a team in to work on this problem for the week. So you're getting a good variety of opinions. But decisions have to be made. So there's a structured process around coming up with these ideas and then actually saying, like, okay, how do we get there? And as you remember in the Wednesday one, that's not just like via groupthink and kind of being like, oh yeah, no, this is the best one to do it. There's actually an activity to actually get there. And we found that's been really effective. It's really helped us uncover also different ideas, that might not come up if you were not to do that sort of exercise. And of course, it's time bound. The world's getting faster, the way we work is getting quicker. Things need to come out, I guess, with a sense of urgency. So we find that being bound by that weekly time really helps us to move forward and move in the right direction. So I guess do you have any questions in the over up?
Yeah, I'm going to play moderator for a bit. We've got one question. I think we kind of covered this a little bit, but it probably wouldn't hurt to elaborate. So the question is that basically you're using this in a software context, but could it be adapted for other industries? And if so, what would you modify to make it apply in, say, restaurants, hospitals, farms, warehouses?
Absolutely. So I think I might jump in on this one first. So it definitely can be applied to a lot of other industries. We've actually found that we, I guess, started using the sprint process as the growth team at Tanda, but as we sort of brought in other people and, we run the Ask the Experts section with other parts of the business, and they actually went like, hey, this is pretty cool, and they started using it as well. So we definitely have found it's not specifically like a tech team sort of thing, and when you're applying it to, I guess, non-tech problems, those first 3 days, especially the scoping day, that you can apply scoping to any problem, right? Figuring out a map, figuring out, like talking to people and asking the experts, picking a target, a lot of that can be applied to not necessarily tech problems. Some examples within Tanda as well, the WS team actually ran a sprint on trying to increase retention with customers. It's not really a tech problem, but they still managed to run sprint and they got some really good successes out of that.
Thanks, Alan. I've got another question here. I want to throw it to myself because it's about A/B testing. I could talk all day about this. So the question is, Alan mentioned A/B testing. Do you have any stories about A/B testing, A, B, C, or D testing, that have produced unexpected results or delivered enhanced productivity? So I guess if people are unfamiliar, the idea behind A/B testing is that you test 2 variants. So for instance, say we have like a sign-up page and it does okay, but we want to improve it. Rather than just like jumping to a completely different system which might fail, the idea is to test like that's your A, that's your control, and you run an experiment where you show a second variant. So perhaps 50% of users see the first one, 50% see the second one. And we found A/B testing, like, it's used quite commonly, and it's a very good idea. But the issue which we've encountered in the past occasionally, and which other people may also run into, is that A/B testing, it relies on statistics, and unless you have a very large sample size, in a lot of cases, you may have difficulties getting to a convergent result. So, for instance, if you have a low conversion rate, so very few people sign up through a certain workflow, it may be that you need to collect data for 3 months before you actually get a result, and that's really not ideal. So there are a lot of strategies we've explored around A/B testing. So actually, I probably won't go into this. If anyone wants to talk about A/B testing, come and find me later. But we've definitely found through A/B testing certain ideas. So because A/B testing is very easy, it allows us to be very experimental. So we can basically try a lot of different things which may not seem like they have a lot of merit in the first place, and just like try them, and we can validate whether or not they actually show a good outcome.
It's a really good mindset as well, because if we're experimenting all the time, it's another level of, okay, we're working towards this, and what else can we put out there and see if it works? What could be vastly different? So creatively, it's actually quite fun to think about, all right, we've got this one, how could we flip it on its head, test that and see if it works? Something that Sprint kind of encourages as well is to do that. So if you come to the decisive part and you think that, okay, there's two really good ideas, but they're competing, just run both of them against each other and see what results you get on the Friday. So A/B testing before you even start A/B testing the real thing.
Cool. Looks like that's all. I think we're doing pretty well on time. Thanks, guys, for listening.